I had been waiting for this day for what felt like an eternity, counting every step, every sleepless night, every long hour I spent in front of my books while juggling work, household responsibilities, and the endless demands of being a wife and a mother. My graduation was not just about a piece of paper or a certificate that announced I had completed my degree. It was about proving to myself that I could still achieve something meaningful, despite all the obstacles that life had thrown at me. For years, I had sacrificed my own dreams because my family came first. My husband's career, my children's school, my in-laws' expectations, the never-ending chores and responsibilities that weighed on my shoulders. I told myself it was all worth it, that my turn would come one day. And finally, that day had arrived. The moment I put on my graduation gown and looked at myself in the mirror, I felt like a different person. Someone who had reclaimed a part of herself that she thought had been lost forever. I could feel tears brimming in my eyes as I adjusted the cap on my head, imagining how proud my husband would be, how my children would cheer for me when they saw me walking across the stage. I had told them weeks in advance, reminded them constantly, even showed them the invitation card that clearly mentioned the date, time, and venue. I thought they understood how much this meant to me. After all, how many mothers go back to school, in their 40s, struggling against every odd, refusing to give up? I pictured us taking family photos afterward, smiling together, maybe going out for dinner to celebrate. But as the ceremony drew closer and I checked my phone, I realized something was terribly wrong. There were no messages from my husband, no excited voices from my kids, no plans being made to come together. I called them, but nobody picked up. I assumed they must already be on their way, maybe caught up in traffic or busy parking the car. I clutched my phone tightly, waiting, reassuring myself they wouldn't let me down on such an important day. Yet as I walked into the auditorium, my heart sank deeper with every step. Rows of families were seated together, parents cheering for their children, spouses holding hands, children waving proudly. I searched desperately through the crowd, scanning every face, hoping to see someone familiar, but my section was empty. My family wasn't there. Not a single one of them had come. My husband, who had promised to stand by me, was missing. My children, who I had sacrificed so much for, were missing. My parents, my siblings, no one had made the effort. And then, as I sat down with tears threatening to spill over, a notification buzzed on my phone. They had all gone somewhere else together. Not only had they abandoned me, but they had chosen to spend this day with someone else. As if my achievement meant nothing at all. I sat there frozen, the noise of the cheering crowd around me echoing in my ears like distant thunder, while inside me there was only silence, a suffocating emptiness that made it hard to breathe. My hands trembled as I held the program sheet, but the words printed on it blurred behind the tears forming in my eyes. My heart begged me not to believe what I already knew, that my family, the people I had lived for, sacrificed for, and loved beyond measure, had decided that my moment of triumph was not worth their time. I scrolled through the group chat where we usually shared everything, expecting at least a word of encouragement, a good luck or we're proud of you. But instead, what I saw was pictures they had posted together at another event. They had gone to my sister-in-law's housewarming party. A party. They chose balloons, laughter, and selfies in someone else's new home over the day their wife, mother, and daughter finally fulfilled a dream she had nurtured in her heart for decades. I couldn't stop staring at those smiling faces, the same faces that should have been smiling at me from the crowd, clapping as I walked across the stage. My husband had his arm around my children in the photos, and their grins pierced me like daggers. Did they not realize how much this meant to me? Or did they realize and simply not care? The ceremony began, and one by one graduates were called on stage. Families erupted with cheers, mothers waved, fathers whistled, children shouted out names with joy. And when my name was finally announced, I forced myself to stand tall, to walk across that stage with dignity, to accept my certificate with hands that shook not from nerves but from heartbreak. I smiled for the camera because that was expected. But inside, I felt as though a part of me had been hollowed out. The applause that followed was polite and mechanical, strangers clapping out of courtesy, while the only hands I longed to hear remained absent. As I walked back to my seat, I wondered if I had ever truly mattered to them, if they ever saw me as more than the person who cooked their meals, washed their clothes, paid their bills, and solved their problems. I had given them everything I had, and in return, they gave me absence, silence, neglect. The woman next to me had her parents wiping tears of pride from their eyes, and I envied her with a pain so sharp it made my chest ache. I tried to tell myself that maybe there had been some emergency, that maybe something had gone wrong at the last moment, but deep down, I knew the truth. They had made a choice, and that choice was not me. That when the ceremony ended and the graduates were surrounded by their loved ones in warm embraces, I found myself standing alone at the edge of the hall, clutching the certificate that was supposed to symbolize triumph but now felt like a cruel reminder of everything I lacked. The sound of laughter filled the air. Camera flashes went off in every direction. Proud parents kissed their children's foreheads, and friends posed for endless pictures. I pretended to check my phone just to mask the loneliness that burned like fire in my chest, but my hands kept shaking as I scrolled through their social media posts. My husband had uploaded a video of my children dancing at the housewarming party, captioned with words about how proud he was of them, how they were his joy and his reason for everything. Not one word about me, not even a single sentence acknowledging that his wife was graduating after years of struggle. I wanted to scream, to cry, to call him right then and demand an explanation, but my pride held me back. I didn't want to be the woman begging for attention from her own family. So I forced a smile when one of my classmates asked if my family was here, nodding vaguely and saying they were outside, knowing very well that no one was waiting for me. I walked out of the hall slowly, hoping, praying that maybe, just maybe, they had decided to surprise me, to show up late, to make me believe they cared. But outside, the only thing that greeted me was the cool evening breeze and the sight of other families piling into cars together. I stood under the fading sunlight, my heart breaking more with every passing moment. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called my husband again. This time he answered, but his tone was casual, distracted, as though I had interrupted him. "We're at your sister's place. It's such a great gathering. You should come join us," he said cheerfully. I felt my throat tighten, my voice nearly cracking as I whispered, "It's my graduation today." He paused briefly, then laughed as if to brush it off. "We couldn't miss this party. You know how important it is for family connections. Anyway, it's not like you need us there. You did it for yourself, didn't you?" His words stabbed deeper than any silence ever could. For years, I had convinced myself that my sacrifices would eventually be seen, that my love and effort would one day be acknowledged. But in that moment, standing outside with my gown and certificate in hand, I realized they never saw me, never valued me, and maybe never would. The ride home was the loneliest journey of my life. I sat in the bus surrounded by strangers with flowers and gifts from their loved ones, while my only companion was the hollow ache inside me. I thought about taking off the gown right there, about tearing up the certificate, about giving up entirely, but then a small voice inside me whispered, this wasn't about them, this was about me. And as painful as their absence was, I could not let it erase what I had accomplished. Still, the bitterness remained, thick and suffocating, reminding me that the people I had lived my entire life for couldn't even spare a few hours for me. That night, when I returned home, the house was empty. The sound of silence pressed against my ears, heavier than any noise could ever be. I placed my graduation certificate on the table and stared at it for a long time, the paper glowing under the dim yellow light, as though mocking me with its quiet importance. I thought of all the times I had studied late into the night, with coffee cups stacked beside me and books spread out across the floor, while my children slept peacefully in their rooms, and my husband came home late without once asking how my classes were going. I thought of how I used to wake up before sunrise to prepare breakfast, then rush off to work, then attend lectures, then return to cook dinner and clean up, my body exhausted but my heart determined. I remembered the moments when I wanted to quit, when the weight of responsibilities almost crushed me, but I kept going because I believed that one day, this moment would be shared with the people I loved most. And yet here I was, sitting alone in a silent house, the echoes of laughter from the party still haunting me through the phone as they continued to post photos online. My son had written "Best Day Ever" under one of the pictures, while my daughter posed happily in a corner decorated with balloons. My husband looked proud, smiling in a way he had never smiled for me. I wanted to be angry with them, to scream and break something, but instead, I just sat there numb, the tears rolling down silently as if they had been waiting years for permission to fall. I had always believed that family meant everything, that sacrifices would be rewarded with love and loyalty. But now I began to wonder if I had built my entire life around a lie. When they finally returned home, late at night, smelling of food and perfume from the party, they didn't even notice the certificate on the table. My husband glanced at me briefly, muttered a tired "you should have come too," and walked into the bedroom. My children were too busy laughing over a video on their phone to even ask me about my day. I wanted to tell them how much it hurt, how deeply they had wounded me, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I simply said goodnight and retreated to my room, closing the door softly behind me. Lying in bed, I realized something had shifted inside me forever. That day should have been a celebration, a memory etched into our family's history. Instead, it became the day I understood how invisible I truly was to the people I called my own. They didn't just miss my graduation, they missed me. They missed the woman who had been fighting silently for years to prove herself. And perhaps the most painful part was that they didn't even see what they had lost. The following days stretched into one another like a blur, each moment heavy with an unspoken tension that lingered in the air between me and my family. They carried on with their lives as though nothing significant had happened. As though my graduation was just a minor event, not even worth mentioning. While I carried the memory of their absence like a wound that refused to heal. At breakfast, my husband scrolled through his phone, laughing occasionally at jokes his colleagues sent him, never once looking up to ask me how it felt to finally hold that certificate in my hand. My children argued about trivial things: who got to sit in the front seat of the car, whose turn it was to use the tablet, but neither of them asked me about my big day, the day I had spent years preparing for. It was as though I had celebrated it in a parallel world that did not overlap with theirs. The more I tried to ignore it, the heavier it became, pressing against my chest every time I saw the framed photos of other family events on the walls, each smiling face a reminder of the celebration they had chosen over me. At night, I would sit at my desk staring at the certificate, running my fingers over the embossed letters, whispering to myself that I mattered, even if no one else believed it. I replayed my husband's words again and again, in my mind: "You did it for yourself, didn't you?" And I realized that perhaps he was right in a way he never intended. I had done it for myself. I had pushed through exhaustion, loneliness, and discouragement, not because they cheered me on, but because I believed, deep down, that I deserved to reclaim a part of me that had been buried under years of servitude to everyone else's needs. And yet, even with that realization, the pain of their indifference remained like a shadow I couldn't escape. My colleagues sent me congratulatory messages. My professors told me how proud they were. Even acquaintances on social media admired my perseverance, but the voices that mattered most were silent. There is nothing lonelier than achieving something extraordinary and finding that the people you love most do not even care enough to notice. I began to withdraw little by little, speaking less at the dinner table, engaging less in their endless chatter about parties and outings. They didn't even seem to notice that I was fading, that I was retreating into myself. It struck me then with brutal clarity. Had been pouring love, energy, and time into a well that had no bottom, into people who never intended to fill me back. And once that thought rooted itself in my mind, it began to grow, changing the way I saw everything around me. Perhaps my graduation was not the end of my journey, but the beginning of something else entirely. The realization that I could not keep living for people who would never show up for me, no matter how much I gave them. Weeks passed, and life in the household continued as though nothing significant had ever occurred, yet within me, something had shifted permanently. I moved through the days performing the same duties, cooking, cleaning, working, smiling when expected, but my heart was no longer tethered to their approval. The silence of my graduation still echoed inside me, a constant reminder that no matter how much love and sacrifice I poured into these relationships, they had failed me when I needed them most. I started to spend more time with myself, reading, journaling, walking quietly through the park after work, savoring small moments of peace that I had long denied myself. For years I had lived as if my worth depended on their validation, but now I understood that I could not rely on people who had so clearly shown me where their priorities lay. The anger slowly gave way to clarity, and the tears began to dry into resolve. I began considering possibilities I had never allowed myself to think of before. Traveling to places I had dreamed of, pursuing further studies, maybe even moving to a smaller home, just for myself. a place where my achievements wouldn't be overshadowed by indifference. One evening, I found myself speaking to my reflection in the mirror, still wearing the graduation gown I had folded away but could not bring myself to discard. "You did it," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes again, but this time, they were not tears of pain, they were tears of pride. "Even if nobody came, you came for yourself." In that moment, I realized that my journey wasn't about who showed up or who didn't. It was about the strength it took to show up for myself, to believe in myself when no one else bothered to. My family would continue to live in their world, full of parties and shallow celebrations. But I had stepped into another realm altogether, one where my value wasn't determined by their applause. Perhaps they would never recognize what they had lost, never understand the depth of the wound they inflicted, but I no longer needed them to. I had walked across that stage alone, but I had walked it nonetheless. And though the seats reserved for my family had been empty, my spirit had been filled with something far more powerful than their presence and knowledge that I was capable, resilient, and enough. My graduation, though lonely, became the day I was truly reborn. Not as the wife or the mother who lived only for others, but as a woman who finally chose herself. And that, I realized, was the greatest achievement of all.